Welcome back to the How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast. My name is Jared, and I am your host. Today we are on Chapter 2 of our new segment, Growing While Growing Broke. So first off, welcome back. The segment, if you're just tuning in, it's all about life struggles, obstacles, changes, any issues that we might experience as passionate farmers and entrepreneurs as we try and pursue our dream, all the while going broke. So I'd like to start off by thanking our sponsors, which is just us. Check out our website, howtostartacannabisfarm.com. We've got hemp genetics, a little bit of hemp flower. You can also check out our other website, mellowmoosehemp.com. Mellow, M-E-L-L-O-W, Moose, M-O-O-S-E, hemp.com. And we just got our Patreon website set up. So Patreon, patreon.com/HTSACF. First initial of how to start a cannabis farm. HTSACF. All right, back to it. So last episode was all about mental health and the issues that plague entrepreneurs, farmers, and such. Unfortunately, anxiety, depression, blah, blah, blah. And we ended it with the fact that when all is said and done, you might be able to deal with your depression and anxiety, but it doesn't change the fact that your plants still need food. And you still need to eat. So you're still going broke, and money is obviously the issue. So welcome to the next chapter, Who Eats? Feeding you and your plants based on a budget. So for those that don't shop like me or have yet to be broke enough where you're forced to figure this out, when you go to the grocery store and you look at the price tag of all the different stuff, there's usually a little number on the tag that breaks down the price per ounce for you. It's usually like on the bottom left, bottom right. When you start paying attention to it and actually running numbers, pull your phone out, figure out how many ounces are in this product, blah, 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 you'll notice that many of the bulk or large size items are actually more expensive than the smaller ones. Marketing. But just like that little number at the grocery store, which I recommend you pay attention to, fertilizer and amendments, they have a similar number, or three numbers, directly on front of the bag that can help you in your decision. Yes, I'm talking about the NPK ratios. So if you're not familiar with that, which you probably should be, it stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Now, those numbers are not there just all willy-nilly. They are the percentages by weight of a specific nutrient. So something that reads a 555 has 5% by weight of nitrogen, 5% by weight of phosphorus and potassium. So if this is a 50-pound bag, 2.5 pounds of each nutrient would be present, as 5% of 50 is 2.5. This is how you determine how much of your fertilizer you would add to an acre if your soil test said you need X amount of nitrogen, Y phosphorus, Z potassium per acre. That's how you figure that out. So if you're comparing two different fertilizers, or brands, I should say, of the same input, you can divide your NPK percentages by the price and see which bag is cheaper. Now, don't forget, when you are crunching these numbers, because not all products are the exact same, you really should factor in bioavailability and the sources of your nutrients. For instance, not all nitrogen comes from the same source. Some might be salt-based, while others come from more biological forms. For instance, something might be sold to you as a composted form from, let's just say, cow manure, whereas something else might be ammoniacal nitrogen, or something from like a, I don't know, urea. Those are very different. Some also, a lot of products now are containing bacterias and fungal products that can act as what I consider little employees for your soil food web. Whereas other may contain synthetic-based ingredients that could fry and kill any of your microbes and fungi that are in your organic-based living soil. So just remember, just because it's cheap doesn't mean that it's going to work with your method of cultivation or your cultivation philosophy. So what happens when the good organic stuff is too expensive, or your morals won't let you go down the synthetic route? Or for the homies that feel that the organic stuff works too slow and synthetic or salt-based nutrients are the human equivalent to a microbe creating enzymes that break down organic matter into food for themselves or the root zone. Either way, what happens when both of you are broke as shit? I'd like to introduce you to the world of KNF. KNF, 3 letters, stand for Korean Natural Farming, and the vernacular being modern natural farming. They both utilize a foraging approach to obtaining nutrients at a very low cost. So the idea is to source different types of plants, fruits, and fish at various stages of life for their nutrient content, growth hormones, such, which are going to be made bioavailable through a fermentation process using brown sugar. And just to give you an idea, the recipe for that would be weigh out whatever you find. So if it's grasses, if it's fruits, weigh that out in a container, chop it up, put it in a separate container, weigh out an equal amount of brown sugar, put that in the same container with your plants or fruits, mix all that up really well, top it with a little bit more brown sugar, then put a lid on it, let it sit for about 7 days, 2 weeks if you'd like. 7 days should be sufficient, but some products like fish, you can let them sit for up to a year. Afterwards, go ahead and pour that liquid off, and then use that at about 1 to 1,000. So 1 gallon of ferment per 1,000 gallons of water. I'll give you an idea. So for instance, this year I walked my property looking for a bunch of grasses and different bioaccumulators and drought-resistant plants to ferment. And ideally, if you harvest them early in the morning where the plants themselves aren't stressed, they've got as much water as they will have in them throughout the day, essentially preparing for the day, you'll get the most nutrient-dense plants that I guess would exist at that point in time in that place. And they work great, but the nutrient density of your ferments, and again, this is strictly from my experience because I live in a relatively arid area, live tucked away in the mountains. My natural soil is straight clay. There's not a lot of, I don't live on ag land, I live in forest land, and because of that and the actual plants around me and the environment that thrives here, there's not a lot of good nitrogen. And so the grasses and such that I collected weren't as high as I would hope them to be in nitrogen, which makes my ferments not ideal. It still has great stuff, but that was one of the issues that I had this season, where the ferments that I made, they didn't have enough for the rate that I was feeding everything. So the nutrient density of your ferments will directly correlate with the nutrient density of your inputs. So sourcing plants that are in good health, fast growing, picked early in the morning will result in best ferment you can make. Some folks that are really, really all into the KNF movement, all natural farming, regenerative farming movement, at some point they realize, the only way to bring the quality of your ferments up is to grow everything yourself. And so that's what a lot of people do. They have dedicated greenhouses, dedicated land to growing all of their inputs. And so all of a sudden your farm now becomes as closed loop as it can be. Now on scale, I understand, this is a farm podcast. And so very rarely are your workers or you capable of foraging for 1 acre, 5 acres, 10, 50, 100 acre farm, 1,000 acre farm. I mean, that's just not really possible. So on scale, what I would recommend doing is contact your local farms, whether it's vegetable, fruit farms, grocery stores, anywhere that manufactures, food products, whether it's, salsa, jams, anything like that. Ask for leftovers. Ask for the bits and pieces of just about everything. You can find, and you can separate them. So things that are extremely high in nitrogen. And by the way, before you just start adding stuff together and fermenting it all and just feeding it, remember that each input has a different nutrient value. Something that I experienced was I was messing around with beet ferments, and I thought that the beet, the beet greens, the top part, I thought that would be great for my vegetative growth because, it was green. And it had a little too much phosphorus in it than what I would have liked and burnt the shit out of my plants. So that would have been more ideal for a transitional phase, or even early flower, just because of the content. But for what I already had in my soil at the time, it was way too much. And it took months for them to reset. So just kind of factor that in. So as you move forward and you start collecting vegetables and fruits and whatnot, kind of separate them. You've got stuff that's really high nitrogen. Great. That's great for early veg, late veg. As you start finding things that are a little bit more, almost like beets, bananas, things like that, that would be great for flowering or even that transitional phase. Separate those ferments out and make different ferments and use them at different times. It'll only increase the efficacy. If you live by the coast, I think you should definitely try to strike up a deal with some of the local fishermen, or even whether they're not fishermen. I mean, even I don't know if they have them everywhere, but like fish cleaning stations, like on the jetty or on a pier or something like that, or at the docks by like a deep sea fishing area. Try to strike up a deal with somebody and see if you can't collect all the leftovers, the guts, everything like that. It's all useful. Again, you're just fermenting it, and then you'll be filtering it out and then using that liquid. So if you can find a way to make use of someone's trash, that becomes your treasure. Now, I have learned, just as a FYI, that many places it's not policy to give away fruits and vegetables that are rotting or just not appetizing, because you're not supposed to feed people, I guess. I don't know. It's the same reason why a lot of restaurants can't give away uneaten food or leftover food. But in that same sense, just like restaurants will package it up for a homeless person or something, or just somebody that's on hard times, and maybe leave it by the dumpster. I have found good success with talking to an employee and be super cool with them. For me, I try to hit up the youngest person. Usually if it's a female, it works even better for me. And just ask her. 75% of the time, it works 100% of the time. So just be cool, man. Just be cool. You'll be alright. But it's a wonderful place to make use of waste products. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff gets thrown away, or maybe it gets taken back and resold to somebody else. But that's who you need to be. You need to be the garbage man. Now, in all this, you obviously still have to buy brown sugar. But the beauty of brown sugar is that it can double up as microbe food and during flowering, a bud sweetener towards the end of harvest. So in terms of functionality and utilization, it's one of the few inputs that you can use at different stages of growth for different purposes. You can use it for fermenting. You can use it for improving, again, your microbial populations. And you can improve the sweetness of your bud. Makes a big difference. But KNF is also useful for saving time in terms of making your nutrients or amendments more bioavailable in general. So I just had this conversation today. I was at the grow shop or grow store, I guess, and my financial situation this entire season's been rough. It's been far from ideal. I mean, it's been really rough, emotionally rough as well. But I was having a conversation with one of the employees there and explaining to him, my natural way of doing things. I mean, I do some ferments, but it's not all I rely on. I usually do a lot of top dressing. The problem with top dressing, and the reason I do that is, I feed the microbe, I feed the soil, feed the microbes feed the plant grows. Well, it takes time for that to happen. And because I'm playing catch up, and because time is of the essence, a lot of times it's more useful to use something that's more bioavailable than sticking with the standard top dress approach. So instead of, for instance, maybe you're just top dressing kelp or top dressing this or that, try fermenting it. You're basically doing the job of the microbes ahead of time. And so now you're gaining this liquid that's got all the good stuff ready to go. And so as you feed it to your plant, you see results that day, the following day, maybe even 2 days, 3 days, but it's still faster than a week. And for the purpose of getting ahead and or staying ahead, KNF can be extremely useful. Now, if you're interested in more KNF stuff and the modern, and actually, let me back up. So I was going to say the modern natural farming tech. The difference between KNF and the MNF or MNFT, modern natural farming techniques, the difference is just making use of what's around in the modern world. A lot of the requirements for the KNF recipes, I mean, the KNF is built on the Korean landscape, and things like young bamboo shoots. Obviously, we don't have young bamboo shoots everywhere, so kind of changing that over and making use of what's around us with the context in mind. That's where the modern natural farming techniques come from. Now, I don't know who started the modern natural farming tech, but I will recommend following Microbe Alchemist on Instagram. Dude's amazing when it comes to KNF stuff. For the KNF stuff, though, look up Master Cho. He's got a free, and I don't know, somebody might be selling a book, but I know that there's a free PDF all about KNF. It's on Google, you can find it. Master Cho is the man that is credited and probably responsible, at least for the modern awareness of it, but credited with the KNF movement. Him and his family and followers regularly do talks all over the world. Actually, they were here in little Southern Oregon, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, doing a little show. Not a show, expo, class, something like that. His son, at least I think it's his son, created another version called Jadam, Jadam, which to my understanding was created in the event you don't have access to sugar. Now, I think that's much more of a anaerobic, bacterial, sun tea style brew, but some people swear by it. I have yet to dive into it, just because I'm not there yet. But a lot of people say, I mean, they preach great things, and there's a lot of different recipes. I think it's worth. I mean, I've opened the book or the PDF or whatever and take a gander at it, but it's worth looking into. Definitely worth looking into. Now, if you can't afford sugar and you don't want to try the Jadam stuff, look around you. Utilize the microbes and whatnot from different parts of your property, different parts of the forest, whether you're utilizing forest stuff, which is just like the top layer of soil, like right underneath the I guess the leaves and whatnot, just from the underneath the leaves all the way to, we'll say, the roots, that top layer where a lot of the I guess microbes, worms, all that stuff lives. You can use a lot of that and harness some of the microbes, but use those microbes and brew some compost tea. The purpose of compost tea, and obviously you can use compost, worm castings. The idea of compost tea is to increase your microbial population faster than what would normally happen in a natural soil environment. So then by feeding your compost tea to your plants, you're infusing, or I guess not infusing, but adding a plethora of microbes, which should increase not only the overall health of the soil and the speed in which your soil breaks down nutrients and then feeds your plants, but it should help unlock any issues and ideally make your plants grow a little bit better. Now again, this is something that microbe or compost teas can be done on a budget beyond let me back up. Compost teas can be utilized regardless of your budget. There are plenty of compost tea extracts which essentially have been done for you. So if you've got the money and you don't want to deal with washing out bags and all that stuff, then you can just spend the money, get the extract, and it works. But for those of us that are broke, you can basically go around your property, grab a few handfuls of soil, put them in ideally a brewing bag. If you don't have a brewing bag, just take an old pillowcase, something that ideally doesn't have any dyes or anything like that. Make sure it doesn't have any detergent, anything like that. So if you have to, just wash it with water and then use that. But take some, a few handfuls of soil from different parts of the property, whether it's underneath trees, everywhere. Some of the duff, the top layer of soil in the forest, maybe a couple shovelfuls of compost, some worm castings. Put all that in a bag, put it in a container, a bucket, 55-gallon drum, put an air pump down there, and get it bubbling for 12 to 48 hours, depending on your goal. Most people choose 12 hours just for safety reasons. On the long end, I guess you can choose 48, just depends on your purpose. But they're one of the best ways to improve soil fertility and get every last bit of nutrients out of your soil without spending a lot of money. Now, compost teas are an entire book of themselves. I mean, books have been written on compost teas. Recipes have been tailored to every imaginable scenario. Again, whether it's early veg, mid veg, late veg, transition, early flower, mid flower, late flower, whether you need something to add a little bit more this, that, whatever. Compost teas are an entire subject, and I highly recommend at least doing a little bit of research into them so that you can get a better understanding of how to utilize this tool, because that's what they are, especially in a place where we're growing while growing broke. Knowing how to use this to the best of your ability really is all the difference when you're trying to make use of what you can with what you have. also, with the addition of KNF and understanding how to shop for your amendments, combined with a compost tea regimen, you should be able to take advantage of what you already have and at least become more effective at using it. Now, this is all good, but what happens when your budget is, super, super limited to the point where, you can feed some plants, but not all of them? When is it time to consolidate your efforts? Tune into next time to Chapter 3 of the How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast, Growing While Growing Broke segment. Consolidate your efforts. Thank you for listening to the How to Start a Cannabis Farm podcast. Don't forget to check out our website, howtostartacannabisfarm.com, for a variety of goodies, mellomoosehemp.com, and our new Patreon page, patreon.com/HTSACF. Thanks for listening.